As if there weren't already enough conflicts in the McAllister household, Georgie stirs up a new one in Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, Season 1, Episode 11, Working for the Enemy. It all begins with his decision to work for Fred Feigenbacher, Jim's competitor in the tire business. In tonight's episode, airing on February 20th, Audrey's past resurfaces when Georgie leaves the tire store to work for Fred Feigenbacher, Jim's longtime nemesis. Meanwhile, Mandy struggles to maintain peace in the household. However, it appears that Georgie and Mandy's foundational flaws aren't as severe as they initially seemed. In contrast, Audrey and Jim have generally managed to keep their marriage intact, though Audrey's ex might be a bigger source of contention than it first appeared. In Season 1, Episode 11, Audrey deliberately teases Jim about Freddie, while Mandy attempts to reason with Georgie in front of her parents. However, Mandy has the good sense to present a unified front with Georgie in public, while privately focusing on persuading him to back down first. She often portrays both Georgie and Jim as stubborn and ridiculous at the McAllister family dinner table. After this episode, I have more respect for Mandy and greater optimism about their marriage. For most of Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, Season 1, it has seemed like the couple was headed for divorce sooner rather than later, consistent with the Big Bang Theory's overarching narrative. The show's intent seems to be for them to stay together for years before ultimately realizing their marriage isn't working. Of course, if they split up too soon, there wouldn't be much of a show. This time, though, things felt different, in a good way. When Mandy told Georgie how she felt, she still allowed him to make his own decisions. Despite her financial worries and her belief that Georgie shouldn't argue with her father while living in his house, the situation didn't spiral out of control. Instead, it was two adults talking through a crisis and supporting each other. More of this, please. The first rule of this kind of sitcom is that everything must be resolved by the time the credits roll, and the series typically adheres to traditional sitcom clichés. For a few weeks, I would have enjoyed Georgie's declaration of independence, announcing that he was leaving the new job to work at another tire business. That would have been amusing, as it would have denied both Jim and Fred his sales experience. Since the start of the season, Georgie and Jim have been battling over Korean tires, but this time, the conflict escalated. Georgie was more frustrated by Jim's refusal to even listen to his reasoning than by the tires themselves. Jim was furious that Georgie ordered a product behind his back that he didn't want to sell. Throughout his childhood, Georgie was always the loser older brother, the one seen as foolish compared to Sheldon's intelligence. Jim has shown Georgie more respect than his own birth family ever did, yet it still isn't enough. Jim's outright dismissal of Georgie's ideas, without even considering them, likely reignited old wounds about how his family has always treated him. Since the show is a comedy, it doesn't dive too deeply into Georgie's mental health struggles growing up in his younger brother's shadow. However, his conversations with Jim made it clear that Georgie's frustration goes beyond this one issue. He struggles with having his ideas dismissed outright. Sales is his one area of expertise, and he wants to be taken seriously. Jim, on the other hand, has the same stubborn streak. He rambles about his 35 years in the business, acting as though his experience automatically makes him right. His frustration with Georgie, whose biggest accomplishment so far is accidentally getting Mandy pregnant, is understandable. But the irony is that Georgie is often right when it comes to the tire shop. Actor Matt Letcher deserves credit for his excellent performance. His portrayal of Fred was so irritating that I couldn't wait for him to get off my screen, in a good way. I wish Jim would just ignore him, though that's easier said than done when someone gets under your skin. Unfortunately, Audrey doesn't seem to share this sentiment. For some reason, she seems nostalgic about her past relationship with Fred. Her reaction made me wonder about something I hadn't considered before. Audrey didn't entirely shut down Fred's advances, even though her primary reason for seeing him was to tell him to stop working with Georgie. Did Audrey enjoy flirting with Fred despite being married to Jim? Or am I reading too much into it? I'd love to know more about Audrey and Fred's past. Did she leave him for Jim, or was it simply a matter of growing older and moving on? There seems to be more to the story, and hopefully, we'll get more insight, just without Fred hogging too much screen time. Though he'll always be Jim's rival, I'd be thrilled if they stopped competing on screen so often.